Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Vegans Explore podcast. This time I have an amazing guest with me, Michael Dorfman, who is an author of The Thriving Vegan, and he also has a new book coming out called The Longevity Wellness Revolution. Thank you so much for being on our show today.
Well, thank you very much, Sean. It's a pleasure.
So I'm excited to speak with you because there's a lot of misinformation, propaganda, people who just have ill spirits. Anytime they see a vegan, they want to immediately say it's unhealthy. There's no way that you can thrive being a vegan. I literally just did a podcast on an article that was saying it's being on a vegan diet, which we all know it's a lifestyle, but being on a vegan diet you have a less chance to live to 100 than if you eat meat. Completely dispelled that. But the reason I want to have you on the show is because you literally wrote the book on being a thriving vegan. You're 84 years young. You've been vegan for how many years now?
17 now.
You've been vegan for 17 years. Even before you were vegan, you were vegetarian since what, 1976. So you're living proof that it's possible. So what I want to give to our listeners in this podcast is your play by play. How were you able to sustain, to grow, to thrive as a vegan? So we're not going to jump right into there. Let's warm up a
Right,
little bit.
okay.
Let's warm up a little bit. So first off, the question I usually like to kick things off with, because it helps me get to know a little bit more about you, is how did you start this journey? Like, what is your vegan origin story? And in this case, your vegetarian origin story.
Well, it goes back to, like you said, 1976. I became a vegetarian, and it wasn't really the health that was the most important, theme. I was interested in Oriental philosophy and religion. And so many people on that side of the world, they just didn't eat meat. So I said, okay, time to become a vegetarian. We'll give it a try. So I did that in 1976, and I went, year by year. And what was happening to me, I generally felt very, very well, but I was getting sick once or twice a year. Not major sickness, but I would have a sore throat. I would have congestion, fever, headaches, and it would last a couple of weeks. So this was happening a couple of times, and the years were passing, a few years. My brother, he he had his 90th birthday this year, and he's been vegan for over 30 years.
Mm.
So he told me that maybe the problem was the dairy, and maybe I should try giving up dairy. But for me, it was no way. Pizza? Are you kidding me? Cheese? Are you kidding me? So I just kept on going, and I kept on getting sick every year. So finally, he told me about the book, The China Study by T. Colin Campbell, and I read it,
Mm.
and it really had an effect on my life. And I decided to give plant-based a try, and that was 17 years ago. And that was for me. And ever since then, I haven't gotten that yearly illness. And I pretty much I've avoided almost getting sick, maybe every once, every couple of years, something like that. But everything, minor. But that was for me. That was for my own health. But was really the second most important point in my journey was a friend of my wife and mine, Beatrice. Oh, by the way, I just want to mention I'm here. I live in Mexico. I've been living in Mexico a total of about 53 years, even though I was
Oh,
born in
nice.
Brooklyn. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. Maybe you could tell by my accent. So anyway, a friend of ours, Beatrice, she had a heart attack.
Mm.
And she was rushed to the hospital, and she had a quadruple bypass surgery. And she survived it, even though she did have a heart attack on the operating table. But she survived it, and they sent her home, and they told her that, okay, just live your normal life. They replaced, like they do in those surgeries, they replaced the original artery with a vein, and they took the vein from her leg. So she went home, and for several months she was okay. About a year passed, and she started having pain in her left arm, which was a sign that something may be wrong again with the cardiovascular system. So they called her back to the hospital, and they decided they wanted to put a stent in. The problem was the vein that replaced the original artery was too narrow, and they couldn't do it. And
Mm.
they told her that there was not much they could do. They sent her home, and they told her that just avoid too much exercise, exertion, walking upstairs, even though her bedroom was on the second floor. What they didn't tell her, and they told my wife. My wife was her closest friend. They told my wife, and they told her son, that she had about 6 months to live.
Oh no.
So here I was like 2 years already into my vegan journey, eating plant-based foods. And I had been reading about doctors that were having success in reversing cardiovascular disease with plant-based diets, and especially Esselstyn, Caldwell Esselstyn, which he wrote the book, The Prevent and Reverse the Heart Disease. So I had read the book, and actually on the top of the cover it says I think something like the book that changed Bill Clinton's life, because Bill Clinton had gone through also surgery and had stents put in, but he decided to go on a plant-based diet. And he did that, and he's still around. I don't know if he's 100% vegan. But anyway, getting back to it, so she said, okay, I'm going to do it. And she read the book. She decided to go plant-based, not 100%, maybe about 85%. And instead of living 6 months, she lived almost 10 years.
Mm.
So for me, it was like that was it. And had such an impact on me, because I started doubting. That's when I really started doubting the medical industry,
Oh.
and wondering, well, what's going on here? I'm reading about it, and here I have a personal experience of a friend of ours who was able to turn this around. And why isn't that the default diet, or at least part of it, that doctors can recommend to people who have gone through surgery? And that's not happening. And then you find out from research that they just don't have the training. They don't. There's very little on nutrition and lifestyle changes that doctors learn about, and therefore it's the drugs and the intervention therapies that they use. So I learned that, and then I go on to doubt. Well, if it's true with heart disease that you can actually slow down and even reverse heart disease, what about other diseases? And then you find out that it's true, and plant-based foods have a tremendous impact on either preventing, slowing down, and even reversing some chronic diseases. So that was a big thing for me.
You said so much in that, so many huge tidbits that I've had conversations with other people over the years. I recently just had a follow-up conversation with Dr. Michael Clapper on a lot of the topics that you're talking about. And what I see being the big issue is the commingling of commerce and healthcare. And with those two things being so closely tied together, you can almost find those correlations between the pharmaceutical industry, the big meat industry, dairy, all of these. Like, if you were to really go down this rabbit hole that you're talking about right now, it's going to disrupt these industries, which together are more powerful than what it is we're talking about, you know? So my question to you
Totally.
is, how do you unpack that as someone who maybe is going down this rabbit hole, is listening to your books? How do you unpack that in a way that gives people hope?
Well, I think that most important, this is not new. This has been going on forever because of what you mentioned about the power of these industries. You know, the agricultural, the dairy, and the egg industries. They have all the money in the world,
Mhm.
and they control the media. They put out information that may be not so true, but it doesn't even matter that the information isn't true. All they have to do is print things, publish information that causes people to doubt
Mm,
and to have uncertainty. And once you doubt, you don't make a change. So all this information, and information is coming out, the recent dietary guidelines, about what to eat. And I just look at that and I say, why are we going in that direction? We keep on going in that direction. And that direction isn't new. It's been going on, since I remember the Basic Seven when I was a kid. It was always meat and dairy based. And, and then it was starting to change a little bit that, I think
yeah.
the guidelines that came out in 2020 was saying, okay, more focus on plant-based foods. And now it's going back a little bit, to the other direction. So I think it's very important for people to understand that the information is, is information is being controlled, and
Mm.
the people who control information on all levels are the industries that have all the money, and they can just sell what they want to sell, an idea, a product. So we have to be more. Uh, we have to pay attention more, and we have to start looking at our health and sort of going towards more responsibility for our own health, and don't depend so much on the doctors and the information is put out on the industries. And when we make that change, when we start seeing that it's so important, our own health, especially if we want to live a long and healthy and vibrant life, we have to take responsibility for our health.
And that's usually the stories you hear, the anecdotes that you hear is that people don't start going down this journey until something happens to them or something happens to somebody that they love. And unfortunately, sometimes that's too late. And in the case of your friend who didn't have the opportunity to have that surgery because of her previous surgery, those are the sort of things that could be the unfortunate result of not taking care of your health when you can. But even to say that, one of the things that I find extremely interesting about your story is that your longevity. I mean, I don't know too much about you other than what I've read in this conversation, but you seem thriving. You seem strong, and you're 84 years old right now. For people out there who will say you can't be strong, you can't thrive on a vegan diet. Just watch this watch this interview. It's like here we have a vegan that's in his 80s and you see it all over the place. It's not one or this case or a small case. It is possible and you're not the exception. So what could you say to someone who may be we're speaking to our pre-vegans right now, someone who may just be starting their journey in your personal you shared your vegan journey. In your personal experience, what were some of the things that you did that you feel helped attribute to your longevity?
Well, I started out the first book when I wrote it in 2019, The Thriving Vegan. It was it was almost 100% on plant based, and that's what I did, that's what I followed. What has happened to me uh, is that I've opened up to different lifestyles. Beside, I still am. I'm 100% plant based. I don't, you know, I avoid food with oils. I'm pretty, extreme in that sense, or completely plant based. But I've adapted new practices, which I've been finding has been helping me. And I think one of the most important points also in my life, my journey, was learning about the blue zones.
Mm,
And I got in, I read the book by Dan Buettner. And for people who are not too, familiar with the blue zones, this was founded by Dan Buettner, who was working with National Geographic, and he had a team. They sent him out to find out where the longest living and healthiest people in the world live. And so he set out. It was a 2-year search, and he came out with the 5 different areas of the world. One was in Okinawa, the other in Japan, Sardinia in Italy, Icaria in Greece, Loma Linda in California, and Nicoya in Costa Rica. So those were the 5, and they were in these different areas, in populations were separated by oceans or land masses. In other words, they weren't close to each other. So part of the search, and what he found out, was there were certain similarities among all of the, each of these 5 places. And one of the similarities was the plant-based. Not maybe 100% in each one of these. There some places, like in Okinawa, they ate some fish, and some places they ate meat as well. But it was just very, very subtle. It wasn't a major part. It was maybe they were 85, 90% plant-based. But there were other things that they had in common. And one of the things was movement.
mm,
They don't go to a gym. They live in rural areas. Their life was movement. They didn't stop moving when they got older. They just kept
mm,
on moving and just being active. And that's sort of against what people, we get to a retirement age in their 60s and say, okay, I'm going to retire now, just hang out and just enjoy my life. What I always wanted to do was just sit down and watch TV or, something like that. But no, that's not the way to go. The way to go is to continue to be active, to
mm,
look to be active. So I started getting into that, and I said, well, what am I going to do to be active? So I started playing pickleball, which I
mm,
love pickleball because pickleball is such an incredible sport for people who get older. And this has been really great for me because, you become active, and you start using muscles and movements and joints that you haven't used in years.
mm,
So this has been a very important. And the other part of the pickleball, which is very important for me, was the social part, because that's
mm.
also part of the blue zones, the importance of having caring, belonging to a caring community. Human
Yes.
beings are social animals. We thrive with people that we love to be with. And what's happening today? People are on their phones. They're talking to people on the phones, and they think it's the same thing as being with the person, that other person, in person. So that's so I belong to that community. And then I got into this whole thing with dealing with stress. So many people deal with stress. I would say that today stress is more prevalent than maybe any time in history, globally, that people get stressed out because of the world situation, what's going on, the uncertainty, the pandemic that we went through, which is extremely stressful with relationships, our work. People are losing their jobs. So stress is something very important. So I took on some lifestyle practices that help me deal with stress, whether it's meditation, whether it's intermittent fasting, whether
Mm,
it's hot and cold therapy. Yeah. So these are different. Different, and then there was breath work and breath holds. So these are things that are helping me, that I practice every day, or almost every day, each one of them. So this keeps me busy and keeps me focused on staying healthy, because I
mhm,
need to remain active. And then the other part is, what are we going to do about the brain? So you have to challenge the brain. You have to, the brain continues to grow if we allow it to grow. So we challenge it with learning new things, learning to play an instrument, learning a new language. I do it podcasting, writing. So in order to really thrive as you age, you need to understand that it takes a new mindset. That instead of believing what we're told that life is, you're over the hill in your 70s, that, yeah, chronic disease is a natural part of aging. So when we get one, well, this is, I got a chronic disease. What are you going to do, And
Mhm.
then you end up just surviving. There are people who survive in their 80s and who survive in their 90s, but there's a difference between surviving and thriving. And that's what I'm all about. And that's what, I really want to, tell people about this message, that it really is possible.
Wow, you dropped a lot of gems right in that last part that you just mentioned. It's obviously the foods that you put into your body, it's the community, it's the stress management, it's all of these things gathered, your brain health, making sure that you're activating it, and you shared some great insights on how to do that. How did you figure all of this out? How did you find all these different modalities in order to apply them to your life?
Well, I think my son, I have two sons. One lives in Mexico, and my other son, Adam, lives in California. And he got into uh, different lifestyles. He got into breath work. He got into well, he's been a vegan all his life as well, but he got into breath work, and he also got into hot and cold plunging. So I was listening to him, and I was saying, wait a second, you want me to start doing that? I'm just 82 years old. This was a couple of years ago. I'm 82. You want me to get into that at my age? So, and then I started read this. So he was sending me videos, and I
Mhm.
was listening to them and watching them. And these were younger people. Nobody's just doing these things at my age. But I was saying, like, hey, I ought to do that, try that. I was doing meditation, because I've been doing meditation for close to 50 years.
Mhm.
So this has been helping me a lot with stress, and living you know, in, uh, in a calm state, as much as possible, even if I have to go through stress, because, stress isn't really bad if it's short lived. The only
Mhm.
problem with stress is when we live with stress and we think that's normal. And that's what's happened to a lot of people. They live in stress, where the cortisol, or the stress hormone, is just constantly flowing, and that's not healthy. That can just You can be eating a healthy diet, plant-based diet, and do other things that for health. But if you're living in stress, that's a sign of problems later on, because stress can cause havoc in your body.
You, as you're explaining this to me, it's making me realize that, and just speaking for myself, when I'm talking about the vegan lifestyle and I'm focusing on the health and wellness aspect of it, I rarely dabble in the other areas that you mentioned. It's usually just a focus on the food. And I feel like that's only a part of the equation. I know for me personally, I do adopt a more of a mindful lifestyle, mindfulness, and, have my own meditation practices throughout the day, kind of staying present, being in the now, and that's done so much for me, especially in situations where I could be overcome by stress and shut down. So thank you for bringing that up, and I feel like it gets to be talked about a lot more. I'll be bringing it onto the podcast a lot more and having those conversations. So I want to go back just a little bit, then we'll come back to the present. Speaking of presence and mindfulness, in 1976, that was a different time, especially in the vegan movement. I don't even know if people were even calling it vegan back then, because I still see videos. I just watched a clip from The Simpsons with Paul McCartney and Lisa
Okay.
Simpson talking about vegetarianism. I know that back then, was that word interchangeable with vegan, or were people actually calling themselves vegan back in the 70s?
Uh, no, I don't remember being called a vegan. It was plant based. but I'm not sure. I don't remember that I would call it vegan. I at that time vegan became popular. I vegan. I think the whole vegan philosophy goes back, but it wasn't very popular at that time. Not like it is today.
Hmm.
So I don't think that I don't remember it to be called vegan at that time.
And what was your experience as a vegetarian back then? Let's take us back to 1976 when you decided to adopt that lifestyle. How did it impact your family? How did it impact your social life?
Well, it was pretty easy. I gave up being because I had I grew up. My father was a butcher. My brother was a butcher. I had butcher cousins, so I ate meat. Oh, I played football. I played high school football. I had 4 scholarships. I was a lineman, and now I'm down to 100. I weighed almost 200 pounds. I weighed 195. I'm only 5'9", but I was very fast and strong, but and that's because I had ate a lot of protein. So when I went into became a vegetarian, giving up meat, I was able to do that. I'm one of those type of persons that make a decision and I can do it. And I'll do it from one day to the next. I can gave up smoking because I used to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I gave up smoking one day to the next. Not everybody is like that.
Mm.
So for me, it was pretty easy, and I enjoyed it. I had, I ate cheese was fine for most people. Cheese was hard for me, and I think for a lot of people, milk products, dairy is more difficult to give up than meat. For me, it was, and I know for a lot of people because cheese is very addictive, and and so for me it was I enjoyed my life, eating, except for those illnesses that I was having twice a year. I was okay until I decided that I had to get over that illness somehow.
So let's go back to the creation, or rather you authoring the Thriving Vegan, and we'll get into the newer book towards in a little bit. Why did you decide to write the Thriving Vegan, and what can people expect to find if they decide to purchase it and read your book?
It was a gradual. It all changed from that incident with our friend Beatrice, because I decided that I had to let people know about this message. So I started giving talks at vegan festivals here in Mexico, in this area where I am. I love to talk in person. I was a teacher, and so I I started writing articles. I started speaking about it, and then we formed a group here. A friend of mine and myself called the Vegan Wave, a Facebook page, Facebook group that started out with 30 members. That was right. That was before the pandemic, and now there's over 900 members here in San Miguel. So I was just so into this active. I was an activist, and so it was just an easy transformation for me, and I just love speaking to people and writing. And so that was the Thriving Vegan, which is available on Amazon. Let me just show. Hold on a second. Yeah, this is the book.
Nice. All right. And then take us into what prompted you to want to write this new book? Like, take us on a little journey into the book and then tell us a little bit about what we can expect.
Yeah, I started writing this book about almost 2 years ago, Longevity Wellness Revolution, and it was because I all of a sudden, I was afraid to reach 80 because my brother reached 80 10 years ago, and he said, "Well, this is the big one, 80 years of age." So I was looking, saying, "Oh man, I'm going to be 80 years old." So, and then all of a sudden, it was like nothing changed. I was, I was felt the same way I did at 79, healthy
Mhm.
and active, and just I was just enjoying life, and I was saying, well, what can I do? And people were telling, they couldn't believe that I was 80 years old.
Mhm,
I asked them, how old do you think I am? I don't know. You what are you, 60, 55? So, and it just, this, something grew inside of me that I'm really enjoying my life. And enjoying life is not the same, as I mentioned, as surviving. So it was something that just grew, slowly. And I started doing my research and then realizing that it's all about a mindset,
mhm,
that you get to the point where you just know that, it doesn't matter how old you are. It's just a mindset that it's not the way they told you it's going to be when you're in your 70s, when they told you, the information the doctors told you, well, all you can do is manage your disease. There's no way you're going to reverse it. Just take this drug, just do this. And it's still that way. But now I feel like I've passed the threshold, and I don't listen to that stuff anymore. And I don't really care how old I am. I know that I'm getting close to the end, because here I am, I'm 84. Even if I live to 100, it's only like another 15 years.
mhm,
But it doesn't matter, because, and that was another thing that was really important when I mentioned about the blue zones, is finding purpose,
mhm,
finding a meaning in your life. When you get up in the morning, what do you hit? Why are you, what does it mean to get up in the morning? But when you have meaning and purpose in your life, and I mean, like you do, you just see it doesn't matter. It's just like something becomes very important. And that was very important for the blue zone, and is to have purpose in your life. So I have a purpose in my life, and it's almost as if I have to keep on going, because, I don't know, call it a legacy. That it's
mhm,
like I can't afford to get sick, a chronic disease, because
mhm.
what is that going to do to my legacy? I won't be able to talk like this anymore, So all of a sudden, comes together, and you're just living this moment in my life when, this is who I am.
Wow. So you brought up some heavy stuff right there, because I know all of us have, I mean, I make up that all of us at one point or the other have thought about what is it going to look like when I'm in my 80s, when I'm in, my 70s, my 60s. And I think your story brings hope that if you continue on this path, that you look at all those different areas that we talked about and pay attention. And I love the fact that you brought in purpose, finding a purpose. And think your purpose could be, being there for your kids. It doesn't have to be this big grandiose thing. I mean,
Exactly.
I look at it more as just like a North Star, something that you can connect to keep you moving forward and not being stuck in the past. And I I think that's not talked. You definitely check out his book, because with the things that we're talking about on this conversation, I feel are bigger than veganism. It's bigger than plant based. These are life, you know, lessons and things that will help ground you in living a full life. And for someone, let's talk to someone, and this actually might be a new audience that I'm going to start speaking to. Um, I got to figure out a catchy name. Have seasoned vegans and pre-vegans. I'll figure that out. I'll figure it out offline. Um,
Old vegans. I don't know.
oh, geez. um, next chapter vegans. Okay, wait. No, next we'll figure it out. Um, for people who are advancing in age, what, and you've already given a lot of advice, but from just I'm trying to figure out a way that we can add more value. What would you say to someone who feels, well, that's good for him. He's been vegetarian since 1976. I'm still eating meat. I'm still having this lifestyle and I'm 77. How can I expect to turn things around now, even if I decide to go on a full plant-based diet, SOS, all that type of stuff? That's for people who don't know SOS. That's no added salt, oil, or sugar. If they decide to take that lifestyle, is it possible for them to see a reversal on some of these chronic illnesses, or is it too far gone for them to get started now?
Well, you had interviewed Neil Barnard, and he wrote the book on diabetes, type 2 diabetes. From what I understand, and the research I've seen, that whole food, plant based, reversing type 2 diabetes is not that difficult, and it's happening. There are a lot of plant based professionals, healthcare professionals, and doctors are reversing or at least slowing down, getting people on their meds, off of their meds, or lowering the meds. So it can happen, and because it is happening, and one of the things that I just wanted to, I guess I can bring up with type 2 diabetes, maybe this is a sort of a clue for people, that the main focus is that people are told that the problem is sugar, that don't watch your sugar, don't eat fruits, there's too much sugar. So that's one of the reasons they tell people to don't keep away from the carbs. And then when you find out that the problem isn't really the sugar is like a result. The problem is the fat, the fat in our system, the fat in our muscles, in our liver, that is not allowing the insulin to get to our cells to give us the energy that we need to live with. So it's, when you start losing weight, for most people, I'm not saying it's 100%, for most people start losing weight, they could start turning around, lessen the effects of type 2 diabetes. But as long as people believe that they have to stop with the sugar and stay away from carbs, it's trouble for, they're not going to be eating healthy if you just eat fat, high fat, low carb foods. So that's what I'm trying to say, is that when you start thinking for yourself and taking responsibility, because the U.S., the standard American diet has produced some of the populations, some of the unhealthiest populations in the world. The United States isn't a healthy population. It's if you look at the lists of the healthiest countries in the world, the United States is not even in the top 30. So something is not going right. The healthcare system, the amount of obesity, heart disease, type 2 diabetes now in young people. When are we going to start thinking, hey, wait a second, maybe we're going the wrong way? And we are. So to me, it's whole food, plant-based as much as possible, at any age, and also realizing that, disease doesn't start when you're in your 60s and 70s. The disease can start way back in your 20s and 30s. My father was during World War II. He was stationed. He had 2 children, so he didn't have to go to war. But they put him it was in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. He was a painter, so he was painting the hull of ships. He painted the Queen Mary, which was the largest ship, most famous ship at that time. So he painted, but we didn't know at that time that the hulls of ships had asbestos in there. So he was exposed to asbestos in the 40s, and it didn't manifest as cancer until he was 78, 40 years later.
Wow.
So what I'm trying to say is that it's never too late. It's and it starts early. When women get mammograms, they say, "Oh, it's the early detection." No, it's not. It was detected when it reached the size when the machine would pick up that little spot. But it's been going on maybe 10 or 20 years. The development. So it's never too late. And there are people who are changing. I speak to people. San Miguel de Allende is where I live, and the pickleball group is mostly with old expats who are living here, 60s, 70s. I'm the oldest one here, but I talk to them, and they're open to it. When they see me, when you start seeing that, there are people who are thriving later on. It's never too late, and you could, even if you have a chronic disease, do the research. There's so much information out there. There's my favorite doctors, whether it's Esselstyn, whether it's McDougall, whether it's T. Colin Campbell, whether it's Barnard, Greger, they're all there. They all have this information. it's all there. So we have to start paying attention to the other side of the story.
It reminds me of the saying, "The best time to start is now." And don't worry about what's you can't
Yeah,
control. If you're in your 60s, you can't grown be not having done this in your
yeah,
20s. Just start now and continue to move forward. And you shared some great doctors that they can check out. They have
yeah.
a whole list of resources. Obviously, your book provides a lot of great knowledge and direction as well. So as we wind down the podcast, I do want to bring this home for people, especially you have two audiences. You have the audience that wants to do it for themselves, but I'm sure you also have the audience that's hearing what you're saying and they want to share this information with a loved one. What would be your advice to them, to maybe someone who hasn't been open to this lifestyle or to some of the things you've been talking about? What's a good way to bring it up to them so that their defense systems don't start coming up when they're defending
Mhm.
how they've done things for a long time?
Well, I think in order to do this, to make a change, you have to want to do it. It goes with anything. If you want to make a change because you're listening to me, or you're listening, that your audience is listening to you, or people you have on your show. If you want to make a change, you don't have to make the change 100%. It's all goes down to, and this is what I talked about in my book as well, is habits. It's just change. You're just changing habits, and it's not difficult to change a habit, a very simple habit. For example, maybe going. Well, how do I start? Okay, well, are there foods that are actually plant based that you like? Do you like oatmeal? Do you like beans? So there are different. You could start out. Add, instead of having meat one day, which you usually have, or dairy, have a meal made of salad. You eat more salad. You add a salad a week. Start out slowly, because if that's the way you want to do it, and then see if you notice a change, because eventually you'll notice a change. Maybe you lose weight. Maybe you'll feel a little bit more energy. So that's the most important thing, is when you change a habit, you make a change, and the habit kicks in, because a habit doesn't happen immediately. We have bad habits. In many ways, I still have my habits that I want to get rid of, whether it's biting my nails or something like that. But it's a habit. A change. Habits change when we do them over and over again, and maybe it'll take a week, and maybe it'll take 2 weeks. But if we repeat something, repetition is what brings about a change in a habit. And what happens with a habit is that it's a change in the connections in the brain. So when you do it, you learn a new instrument. You do something new. You have to keep doing it, and all of a sudden, okay, now I can play. Or I ride a bike. You did it, you tried it, you failed, you fell off the bike, but you keep on doing it. So if you really want to do this, you could start slow. You don't have to become 100% vegan. So, changing a habit is just going. And I talk about it. What I'm doing, I wanted to mention, is that although my book is coming out very shortly, in 2-3 weeks, I'm also working on a guidebook. It's going to be about 15 pages long, which I'm going to be offering free to people who subscribe. It's going to be the longevity wellness guidebook. And I'm going to be talking about, in my book also, I have recipes. I'll be coming out with specifically for people who are beginning to become, plant-based. So it's not that difficult, but we have to want to do that. And then it's important to have a favorable result, that we get a reward when we do something and there is change. So that's important too.
And you gave a perfect segue to one of my last questions. A big thing I always get is, what do I eat? What are some of the things that you eat? They ask me. So I'm guys going to ask that question to you. Like, take us through a typical day. What are some of the things that you eat throughout the course of the day?
Well, I start out. My favorite breakfast food is oatmeal, which I'll combine with a variety of fruits. My wife happens to be extraordinary. She's 80 years old as well, and she's been a vegan cook for 17 years. So we're
Nice.
doing this together. But I prepare breakfast. I make oatmeal, and I'll put some raisins in there, and I'll put some cinnamon, and then I'll add fruits, and then I will have a piece of toast, whole wheat toast made by my wife, and I also have a drink I make out of green tea, well, matcha tea, and chocolate. I make my own chocolate. I love to make things too because I have more control about what I can eat. Because I don't really eat out very much, or we don't eat out very much in restaurants because you don't control, that much of what you're eating. So that's what I'll have with breakfast, and in lunch I would make every lunch would have a salad, and I combine different vegetables, fresh vegetables, even some cooked grain, maybe quinoa or chickpeas, cooked chickpeas. I'll put a grain in there, but I'll have green leaf vegetables with tomatoes, a whole bunch. Variety is very important because it gives you the antioxidants that you need to really, help your health. So I would do that. My wife was always in charge of the main dish. For lunch, we eat all kinds of beans, and here in Mexico we have enchiladas and guacamole, which almost everybody loves guacamole.
Mhm.
So that's another favorite food you can eat. Or hummus, we eat hummus as well. And then for evening, I'll eat the leftovers a lot of the times, and maybe a fruit when I want to, when I feel hungry. So it gets pretty simple, and it doesn't have to be complicated. I eat beans and rice, whole grain rice, always whole food, as close as possible to whole food. Cauliflower, spinach, all kinds of stuff. There's so much to eat, and most of the time you can use the same sauces or covers or gravies that you use for meat. You can use for potatoes and sweet potatoes and all. There's so many recipes out there. There's thousands online. If people want it or really want to do it.
And if people really want to get in touch and find out more about you, where can they get that information?
Well, I have my website. It's longevitywellnessrevolution.com. That's where I post, I come out, I have a Substack account. I publish an article every week, and it comes out to people who become members of my Substack group. I also have a Facebook group, but I think the best thing for now is going to my website, and as soon as my book comes out, The Longevity Wellness Revolution, it'll be available on Amazon and on my website. Yeah, and I'm almost finished with the book, so that's going to be really great. And as soon as my guide comes out, they can get that on my website. That's the way of reaching me. And if you go to YouTube, put down Michael J. Dorfman, and you'll get a whole bunch of YouTubes. I do a lot of podcasts, and I love doing podcasts, and especially this one. That was a great opportunity. Thanks very much.
No problem. And before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to say a message to our audience. It could be on anything that we've talked about, maybe something we didn't touch on, just an opportunity for you to connect directly with our listeners and watchers.
Okay. Well, I just want to mention that we've received two gifts, the greatest gifts a human being can receive. And the greatest gift of all gifts is the gift of life, because without the gift of life, we would never be able to enjoy all the other gifts we've been given. And the second great gift was the gift of our body, because without our body, our life would have no place to live. So We have to really, and this is what I try to remember every day, of how precious this body is, how precious this life is. And if I really want to live a long, healthy life, I have to take care of the home, the vehicle where the life lives. And that's what it is. And our bodies have a tremendous self-healing powers if we trust it, and we don't trust, doctors so much that they determine how we should take care of ourselves. We have to determine, we are the main ones in determining how we should live our life, health, and how we should, preserve our health.
And I want to thank you so much for being on our podcast. I loved hearing your story. It's inspirational. And I'm sure people are going to walk away with a lot of tidbits and action items they can take right away. And for everyone that's watching this, you understand that we are a daily podcast. So we are always looking for stories to tell and sharing all the whole cornucopia that is this vegan lifestyle, especially the areas that we don't always talk about, the mindfulness, the health, the brain health, all those areas that are all part of the equation. So thank you so much for being a guest. Thank you so much for listening. And you can catch all the show notes, all the information for this podcast, as well as all of our other podcasts at vegansexplore.com/podcast. And as always, we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.